Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islam in Life with me, Raza Kazim. Civic responsibility is seen as the responsibility of a citizen and the supposed duty that any citizen may display towards the community at large. But how does that civic duty play itself out for the Muslims? To what extent do Muslims implement this concept? Do the ethnic origins of Muslims play a part in how they discharge this responsibility? Is there a conflict between the civic duty and their Islamic responsibility?
Civic responsibility is defined as the responsibility of a citizen. It is comprised of actions and attitudes associated with democratic governance and social participation. Actions of civic responsibility can be displayed in advocacy for various causes, such as political, economic, civil, environmental, or quality of life issues. So, if challenging laws and statutes through advocacy is the very meaning of civic responsibility, why are Muslims accused of not being patriotic to their nations when they question things on moral grounds?
Muslims are, as Prophet Muhammad says, is the person who all his nearby are in peace with him. So you have to be in peace, you have to be in line with all the laws.
A Muslim, his responsibility, I think, more than others, because Muslims, as the Quran said, must be in a good society, must be do everything that's well in the society and help people, help everything. So I think the Muslims is responsibility more than the others.
Our guest today is Professor Tariq Ramadan, and he will help us with the discussion on this. Welcome to the program.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. I would like to start off by asking, what is civic responsibility?
I think what you said in your introduction is quite clear. It's the responsibility of an individual who is a citizen within a structured community. So within a society, within a structured community, there are rules and law, and it's structured through what we call rule of law, which is very much what Islam is all about. It's our coming together is based on specific rules that we have to abide by, and then within this, every individual, every citizen, to use the term that we know now within the nation state, has duties towards the community and also rights, because it's not only about duties, it's the duties that you have, knowing that there is a give and take within a structured society. So this is what are the civic responsibility within a society.
Very generic definition, yeah. But does that idea differ, or that sense of civic responsibility differ across different Western countries?
No, as soon as we are talking about the structured community where there are rules and we know exactly why is bounding us together. So what makes a nation or a tribe or a clan or a society? There are rules, and then the civic duties and responsibility are the same. The problem that we might have is the way this is translated. For example, the civil society, it's everywhere. The civil society is between the individual and the state. So the state is the structure power, it's a mandate that we give to people to govern, so it's governance, and you have individuals. In between you have institutions and you have dynamics and the way you have to deal with the rule of law, and this is why we are talking about the civil society. And the civil society is the addition of individuals having their civic duties and responsibilities. So this is everywhere. In some society, the civil society is completely absent because it's under the authority of the state. Sometimes there is no real civil society, sometimes there is no freedom, and sometimes the rights of the individuals and even the notion of citizenship is not there, not in the way we are talking about it right now.
And in terms of that civil responsibility or civic responsibility that we've actually got, does it is it encompassed by the state structures, or is it healthier to be outside of the state structures And to what extent are they interconnected?
They are interconnected. I think that the state, in fact, it's what we should understand is normally the natural process. It's a bottom-up construction, meaning that there is a society and there is a structured society giving mandate to a state to govern and to represent the people. So this is why we are saying at the end of the day, power should be with the people, not with the state. Now in our societies very often is the other way around, is that what was the means to get power and to govern a society, it's becoming the end of the ultimate power within the society. So I would say here that it's very important to understand the meaning of the civic responsibility, because in the Western countries as well as in the Muslim majority countries, the civic responsibility is starting with something which is the way you look at an individual should deal with a community. And in Islamic terms, for example, which is similar to what we have, we always start with your duties towards the collectivity, towards the community. So you have some duties. So because this community is protecting you, giving you freedom, giving you dignity, giving you rights, so you have duties towards the community. And so, for example, Rousseau, when he was talking about the social contract, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he was very clearly coming with the Greek tradition, the French tradition, in fact the Western tradition, by saying the social contract is a contract between the individuals and a state when it's established to protect your rights, knowing that this protection of your rights, it's the very essence of your duty and responsibility towards the community. So there is a social contract. So you give, you have some duties, and this is completely in agreement with what we understand in Islam. In fact, our starting point of understanding the civic society is always we start with our duties and we get our rights. We are not obsessed with our rights as it is now. We are always talking about human rights. Everything is about rights, which is not bad in itself. The question is the priority, is what comes first and who is deciding this. So this is where we have to be quite clear that citizenship is very much about your duties and responsibility towards the community before being obsessed with your rights.
So to make it a little bit more concrete, what would you classify as those civic responsibilities or duties that an individual must carry out towards the collective, the community, and so on?
So for example, that's very good. That's a very important point. When you have a community, you know, even though we don't like to talk about it, we are managing power. So in fact, you have a responsibility in the way power is distributed within the society. For example, in our democratic system, you have to vote. So it's not only the right to vote, it's a responsibility for you to vote in order to go with the process of distributing power and giving mandate to the people who are elected. So when we have in Islam, أَمْرُهُمْ شُورَ بَيْنَهُمْ, they have a consultation among themselves, it's a duty that you have to be involved to come with the right process of distributing power. Add to this that, for example, you have rules and you have law. You abide by the law. This is your responsibility. Why? Because there will be no structured community if you, as an individual, you don't understand your duty to abide by the law. So you are law-abiding by definition as a citizen. Second, all these laws are saying something which is essential. We are all equal before law. So social justice comes as something which is part of your civic commitment. So you cannot be passive. There is a contradiction in terms as being a passive citizen. And it's exactly the same as being a passive believer. No, a believer understanding his duties towards God in the creation, understand his duties towards his fellow human beings and fellow citizens within a structured society. And then you come with social justice, commitment, so distribution of power, because we should not forget that as the starting point of everything, because rule of law is how do we manage power. The second is about the legal framework that is institutionalizing our coming together as a nation and as a state. And if we are talking about the nation state, because we also have sometimes to question, this historical model. Is this the final answer that we have in our coming together? And then social justice, freedom, equality are parts of the values that we have to be committed to.
Okay, one of the examples that you gave was this idea of voting. Now I want to pursue that a little bit, because some people would argue that actually not casting a vote is being an active citizen. What would you say to that?
I could accept that. It depends who are the people you are voting for. So for example, if you are not happy with the people and say, at the end of the day, my choice is not you. So there is nothing else that I can do but to vote for not you. So this is also a vote. So to vote or to say, I'm not going to vote in such a way, it depends how you are not voting. Are you not voting because of laziness, or is it because you are facing a political landscape when you see it's not going to work? So it's a vote, but it's not a vote for what you have. It's a vote for, I need to change this. With this, you cannot just say, I'm not going to cast a vote. You also have to be active to change the political landscape to make it more suitable in your situation. And some are always not happy with what they have, but they do nothing to change it for the better. So you can't do that. You cannot be passive with the negative. If you have a negative situation, you have to be active to change it. So by definition, you have the duty to reform your society. So civic responsibility is a civic jihad. It's a resistance to what you have, to go for more justice, because it's not enough to have a rule of law. It has to be implemented the right way, because look at what we have in many industrialized society. You look at our constitutions in the West, they are very good, but are they implemented the right way? And how are they sometimes implemented? Look at us as Western Muslims now. We are facing day in, day out stigmatization and racism, and you are black or you are coming or perceived as a foreigner. You don't have the equal rights. So the rule of law are not enough. We need a permanent commitment to come back to the law in order to implement it the right way, and not just to accept that what is said is what is done, because that's not the reality.
Okay. Lots of interesting points being made, and we'll pick up on some. We value your opinion greatly. Here is what you sent us this week.
This week we asked, can Muslims be both faithful to their religion and patriotic to their nations? Musa from Nigeria said, the issue is not about whether they can be or not. They can, but politicians and the media make these noises of accusing Muslims left, right and centre because they have an agenda against Muslims. And Claire from USA said, a faithful Muslim will always be patriotic, but how others perceive patriotism is the challenge. That's all the comments we have for this week. If you'd like to have your comments featured on the show, be sure to follow us on Facebook or join us on Twitter.
One of the things that you were talking about was the idea of Islamic responsibility being similar to this idea of civic responsibility. Yeah. Are there differences, or are they exactly the same?
I think that if you look at the society and as a citizen, you can reduce this into something which is a regulated commitment. So there are regulations and telling you as a citizen, you have to do this and that. And this is what I called in one of my books, ethics of citizenship, that there is an ethical input. This is coming from your conscience and your understanding. In Islam, there is all this, but there is something which is an added value that is coming with the spiritual dimension of it. And Muhammad Iqbal, for example, was quite interesting by saying, we need to talk about spiritual democracy. Saying that there is something which is coming with your commitment to your belief, to your principles, that should be, it's not always the case, an added value to the way you deal with the law. So the law are not enough. You need to get a sense of the meaning, the ethical dimensions, and the goals, what you are trying to achieve. But in essence, they are not in contradiction. What we would like to see It's the added value of this spiritual commitment to justice, to freedom, to dignity, to protecting human life. This should be an added value to the way you are committed to your duties, because at the end, you don't only do this for human beings. You do this because you know that you are coming back to the one, and this is the very meaning of Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We belong to Him, and our belonging to Him should be an added value in the way you deal with our fellow human beings. So there is a very deep sense of humanism in Islam, very deep sense of humanism. But it's not humanism in the name of the humans. It's humanism coming through our understanding of the divine.
I want to move on to this idea and pursue this idea a little bit more, that if there is a conflict between Islamic responsibility and what the civic responsibility says, what happens in that particular situation? Should the loyalty of the Muslim be questioned in that situation?
First, what we have to say, and this is universal, and we have to say it and to repeat this. Very often people are asking you, you have to be loyal to your country, no matter what. I say, I'm sorry, no. I belong to my principles first. And if my country is going against my principle, I should stand up and be able to be critical towards my country, even towards my community. If all the Muslims are behaving in a way which is against the principles, I should stand up. And this is at the individual level. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, help your brother when he is right and wrong. I can help him when he is right, but how am I going to help him when he's wrong? Prevent him from doing wrong. So stand up for justice. You have it in the Quran, when two groups of Muslims are fighting, you have to be on the side of the oppressed against the oppressors or the transgressors. So there is an ethical, so we are not part of the Islamic Ummah right or wrong. No, Islamic Ummah right and against everything which is wrong. So I belong to my principle. So when it comes to my belonging to a society, when I was trying to write at the beginning about Western Muslims, I was studying this. Are they, fields and tensions where, and at the end you see that, no, the flexibility of Islam and the latitude into the legal framework help you to find your way, that you can still belong to your principles. There is one situation when sometimes you have to ask yourself, should I go or not? It's, for example, when it comes to the army. So you have to go because there is a situation. Some scholars and Muslims are saying, ask about the religion of the enemy. Are they Muslims? You don't go. They are not Muslims, you go. What's that? So if they are unjust and Muslims, I don't go. This is a very superficial answer. And we got also just, in Afghanistan, somewhere asking American Muslims were asking, shall we go or not? Some scholars say, you don't, because in Afghanistan there are Muslims, what is happening. They were not talking about the principles, they are talking about the religion of the
kind of like a religious nationalism almost coming on.
Exactly, and coming with the traditional discussion about Muslims cannot kill a Muslim, and that's it. So you don't ask about just or unjust. On the other side, some scholars, and among them people that I respected very much, are saying, in order to show your loyalty to the Americans, go for it. So how that? I'm going to lose my principle just to show that I am a true American, so I'm going to kill anybody? No. The point is that you belong to your principles. So if this war is right, it's really about justice and dignity, you go. But if you consider at the end, after assessing everything, that this is wrong, you don't. There is something in our law which is called conscientious objection. So you do. Who did this? Christians, and we are so proud today of Muhammad Ali Cassius Clay, who didn't go to Vietnam by saying, that's not my war. We are killing innocent people. Who was right? He was right, and the American government was wrong. We know this now, and he was put in jail for 3 years. So you better end up in jail being right than go to war being wrong. So you belong to your principles. So at one point, we also have to question your loyalty, but no loyalty to a country against your principles, as much as لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. لا طاعة لمخلوق, no obedience to a creature in disobedience to the creator. Meaning what? At the end, your connection to God means you belong to your principles. So be careful, and this is the added value that we should show in our society. I'm not going to kill innocent people. I'm not going to say yes to my country no matter what and how it's done. No, I think that our civic conscience should be playing an important role here.
This is quite an extreme example that you've used, but a pertinent one. But if you extrapolate backwards to less extreme things within society,
such as what?
That so, for example, within the UK, you could talk about the implementation of the prevent agenda that is there. What should be the response of people to that? Because there is a problem around how it's being implemented and who it's targeting.
Yes, so the starting point is to look at it and to assess how much this is just, or is it stigmatizing a specific segment within the society? Clearly it is, and it's targeting and stigmatizing. So we have to be critical. We have to be critical. It's not because it's legal that it's right. What we have to do, our loyalty to our principles, means that we have to be critical. Once I was in South Africa and I was saying you have to abide by the law. And sitting near to me was a brother whose brother was killed within the South African apartheid time. Say, no, I'm sorry. In this country, the legal framework was telling us that white was better than black. I'm not going to accept this. Meaning that we have, as citizens, it's a civic duty to question the law. It's a civic duty to question the governments, and with prevent, which just is what are you trying to do? You are stigmatizing, and you are even asking Muslims to spy on Muslims and to tell, what's that? This is just making Islam as a threat, not belonging to the society, but a potential threat to the stability of the society as citizens, and not only as Muslims. But with other citizens, we have to come together. And this is what is happening even in this country. We see many British citizens who are not Muslims saying, nonsense, that's not going to work like this. This is pure discrimination. It's not equal citizenship.
But within that, one of the things that comes out is that you need to adhere to what are this term, fundamental British values, which include looking at and respecting the rule of law. So that agenda, prevent agenda, is going on down that route. So where do Muslims go with something like that? Because you're being caught up in that spiral of...
That's a very important point, because I think that the rhetoric coming from the government is saying, we are not with us in this. It means that you are not truly loyal to the country, to Britishness or to the British nation. This is where we have to come and to be critical of this by saying, no, that's not this. The way you are putting this us versus them, or this is our value, is there is a difference between playing with a governmental decision and policy and principles. We come with the principles, and this is why the only answer that is going to be effective on this, it's not only coming from Muslims, it's coming from our fellow citizens who are coming with us and say, no, that's not going to work like that. And this is what should happen. And you know why sometimes the Muslim presence is perceived as dangerous on this? Because now we are understanding the very meaning of civic engagement. And say, okay, now we get that. We get that with things that have to do with foreign policy, anti-war coalition. Not going to accept what we are doing. In our name, not only Muslims versus Muslims, but us, British, Muslims and people of other faiths coming together and saying to the government, this is pure injustice. We do the same within. Domestic policies should be dealt with exactly in the same way by showing that no, don't expect from us blind loyalty to your policy, blind loyalty to our principles. And you are going to check your policy against our principles.
Very briefly, we have very little time. Is there a responsibility on the establishment to create an environment where Muslims can discharge their civic responsibility without having to compromise?
Yes, of course. And this is where the establishment is. It depends what you mean by establishment, but coming from the state and coming from the institutions, we need to give this space for the citizens to be able to be loyal to their country, and understanding that there is no way of being loyal if you are not critically loyal. Critical loyalty is the only way to be loyal. So this is what we need now, and we need this by having establishment or institutions not questioning our loyalty when we are critical. No, we are critical because we are loyal. And this is something which, the right to dissent is something which is very important. But Muslims should understand also something, that being against, it's also, should also go along being for something. It's not only being critical without being constructive.
Very pertinent point perhaps to end on. Civic responsibility requires Muslims to engage with the society, but whether this engagement grows organically based on the needs of the society or is imposed by the establishment is a point that does need to be considered. The Islamic responsibility should be allowed to trump any other expectations by society and thereby demonstrate that society respects the individual. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I would like to thank Professor Tariq Ramadan for joining us, and I would thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.